The story begins with Suho Kim, accompanied by Javier and 4 small dragons, arriving at a field. They place their flag, and the dragons get excited upon seeing it. Suho Kim believes his name is Suho Kim, but in this world, he's known as Lloyd Frontera. This is the story of how this ordinary civil engineering student uses his skills to upgrade the land, develop structures, and, in his view, completely turn this world on its head. With great enthusiasm, he calls for Ader, who promptly responds, "Yes, master." Excitedly, Lloyd exclaims, "This is all money." To this, Javier asks if he's lost his mind. A few years earlier, the scene shifts, and the system informs him that he's been chosen to have a random wish granted by the Absolute. The system congratulates him, claps, and then announces that he's now a character in Knight of Blood and Iron. As he lies on the ground receiving these notifications, he tries to remember what Knight of Blood and Iron is and recalls reading it just last night. The system wishes him good luck, saying that he's been given this opportunity, and he starts wondering what wish he must have made to deserve such good fortune. As he realizes he hasn't even been drinking, he wonders if this is one of those web novels where someone ends up in another world. Considering this, he's confused about why he's waking up face down on a dirt road. As he struggles to get up, shivering, he mutters, "It's freezing," and notices something odd about his lips. Then, a health alert pops up, notifying him that his jaw is dislocated from sleeping on the ground. Irritated, he realizes that these alerts are becoming a nuisance, but he also understands he's somehow taken over a character in this story. As he adjusts his jaw, he wonders exactly who he's become in Knight of Blood and Iron. Just then, Javier appears from behind, saying he's been looking everywhere for him. Lloyd turns to see Javier, who urges him to return to the manor. At the same time, the system informs him that this is Javier Azrahen, the protagonist of Knight of Blood and Iron. Lloyd recognizes Javier's appearance from the book and realizes that in this story he's Lloyd Frontera, the infamous hooligan and eldest son of Baron Frontera. Javier says he called Lloyd's name, but he has never once called him a hooligan, and adds, "At least you're self-aware." The system notes that Javier seems to be in a good mood, and Lloyd can sense it. As they arrive at the palace, Javier lights a fire and asks Lloyd if he knows how he ended up in such a state. Javier explains that Lloyd started drinking in the afternoon, got drunk, destroyed pub furniture, and then passed out on his way back to the manor. Reflecting on it, Lloyd realizes this truly fits the life of a hooligan. Javier adds that his lordship was worried and sent him to look for Lloyd because, even though he's a hooligan, he's still his father's son. He warns that if Lloyd dies on the road with his jaw out of place, it would bring sadness to his father. Lloyd shivers from the cold, thinking how nice it would be to have heated floors like in Korea, but quickly dismisses the idea, remembering he's in a medieval fantasy novel. Javier then informs him that he'll leave him to rest and report everything to his lordship. Lloyd asks if that's really necessary, and Javier confirms, making Lloyd think Javier is rather strict. As Javier heads to the door, Lloyd suddenly calls out, mentioning the family's huge debt. Javier pauses, finds the statement odd, and then exits. Lloyd reflects that he knows everything that will happen in this story. Just last night, in his cramped boarding room, he'd read the final chapter. He recalls that in the book, the Baron and Baroness eventually lose everything due to an evil count, with Lloyd ultimately becoming a beggar. He remembers that Lloyd dies, drinking heavily until he coughs up blood. Thinking over his situation, he wonders why being an aristocrat in this world is turning out to be just as miserable as his life back in Korea. Contemplating the role of the Absolute and the system, Lloyd questions what kind of wish could have led to him possessing a character with such a bleak future. Soon after, Marbella Frontera, Lloyd's mother, arrives and asks if he broke anything at the pub the previous night. He denies it, saying he was reading a book. She begs him to go apologize at the pub, and though he suspects this body must have caused the trouble, he agrees to go and clean up the mess. The system notifies him that these two are confused by his compliance, and he wonders why they can't just give him a bit of credit. Outside the palace, a villager gathering feed spots Lloyd and Javier, then quickly hides behind his cart, scrambling away as they pass. Others avoid eye contact as well. A father even pulls his son away from a window to prevent him from staring. The system notifies him that the villagers absolutely detest him, and Lloyd acknowledges that he understands why. He then asks Javier why he's following him, and Javier replies that his lordship ordered him to escort Lloyd to avoid a repeat of yesterday's chaos. Lloyd asks what escort means in this context, to which Javier replies that it's actually for the villagers' protection. Thinking that Javier acts like a gangster, Lloyd realizes the first thing he needs to do is shed this scoundrel image if he wants a chance at getting some food when he inevitably becomes a beggar. He wonders if he can manage to clear the family's debt before then and imagines living peacefully as the heir of a country baron, enjoying a long, easy life. Checking his status screen, he wonders if there's some kind of cheat skill that might help, and the system lists his current skills: human scum, a passive skill that causes others to look down on him, and rowdy drunkard, which makes him a complete nuisance when activated. Frustrated, he waves his hand and notices Javier asking where he's going. Lloyd is momentarily confused but realizes they're supposed to head to the pub. Remembering his promise, he insists he didn't lie and explains he was just lost in thought. Javier asks if anything is wrong, and Lloyd assures him as they continue toward the pub. Lloyd opens the door and politely says, "Excuse me." Javier can't shake a strange feeling as though Lloyd is not the same person as yesterday. When he steps into the pub, he sees the wreckage left behind from the night before, everything broken. He takes a seat, apologizing to the owner and taking responsibility. The system notifies him that the pub owner is on high alert, shivering and begging Lloyd not to act up. Lloyd tries to show some sincerity, but his apology doesn't come off as genuine. The pub owner awkwardly assures him that everything's fine, and they leave the pub. Outside, Lloyd notices the owner still isn't happy, despite the apology. Javier explains that after yesterday's destruction, the owner will probably need compensation for all the broken furniture, which he'd bought with his own hard-earned money. Lloyd thinks about the family's heavy debt, realizing that unless it's repaid, the villagers' views of him won't change. Javier also points out that the pub owner's mother is unwell, and with the winter cold lingering, their lives have only gotten tougher because of Lloyd's behavior. As they walk, Lloyd reflects on how difficult it is to heat the entire pub building with just one fireplace. He thinks of the elderly, who wouldn't be able to endure such cold without a heated floor. Looking at a flickering light, an idea hits him. What if he introduced Ondal floors to this world? This could be a game changer. He knows the old Lloyd Frontera couldn't have dreamed of such innovations, but with Suho Kim's civil engineering knowledge, he realizes he might just be able to settle all the Baron's debts. He clenches his hand in determination and tells Javier they need to return to the pub. Javier asked Lloyd for what reason. Lloyd replies to get my first order. A notification popped up saying your true journey has begun. Lloyd is surprised by the notification, wondering what it could mean. It informs him that he can boost his relationship points, RP, by improving his connection key characters. Noticing his current RP is at 0. Curious, he checks his RP score with Javier, only to find it's at a dismal -30. In a light-hearted attempt to improve this, he compliments Javier, who bluntly replies, "I already know." However, this only decreases the score by 1 point, leaving Lloyd disappointed that flattery didn't work. Back at the pub, Lloyd confidently declares that he's buying the place, and he quickly draws up a contract for the pub owner, offering to cover all construction costs against the property damages. As he hands over the contract, the system warns him that the pub owner is suspicious. He realizes he still has to deal with the image of absolute garbage he's built up in the village, so he awkwardly tries to appeal to the pub owner's sense of trust, urging him to sign. The pub owner hesitantly agrees, but the system still labels Lloyd as absolute garbage, leaving him puzzled but content to secure his first project. Confidently pocketing the signed contract, Lloyd catches Javier's skeptical gaze. He assures Javier that he's serious about turning things around and won't let him down. As they leave, he visualizes the pub's transformation, figuring he won't need to be precise with measurements since the new space will feel snug and cozy. Just then, Javier remarks that Lloyd practically coerced the pub owner into signing, wondering if Lloyd's plotting new ways to cause trouble. Lloyd asks Javier if he's heard of cognitive distortion, explaining it as a way of believing someone will behave a certain way based solely on past actions. a distortion fueled by prejudice and negativity. Javier counters, calling it common sense based on experience. Lloyd rolls his eyes, wondering how he's suddenly become so smooth with his words. Determined to change the pub owner's opinion, he begins laying plans for the construction. Visualizing the job ahead, he clears dirt, stacked materials, and constructed the framework. He knows he'll need to source timber from the Baron's warehouse for a traditional frame and use clay from the riverbed for walls. After a grueling week of labor, Javier watches Lloyd with a critical eye. Lloyd insists it took much longer than Javier's, just 3 cuts estimation. As he shakily gets back up, he's sore but determined to finish. Grabbing an axe to cut the wood, he tries to slice a log but struggles with the weakened body he's in. Javier steps forward, takes the axe, and with masterful skill, effortlessly slices the wood exactly as Lloyd needs. Impressed by Javier's precision, Lloyd realizes he's working with a swordsman on the path to mastery. Placing a hand on Javier's shoulder, he tries to convince him to pitch in with the digging next, leaving Javier reflecting that instead of thanks, he's just given more orders, and the system notifies Lloyd that Javier regrets helping him. Javier believes that Lloyd is truly hopeless. In response, Lloyd asks if Javier's assistance is out of curiosity, noting that he genuinely wants to see what happens. Lloyd insists they need to finish the work faster and suggests they do it themselves. As they start digging, Javier recognizes that Lloyd has changed significantly in just a few days, but his past makes him utterly untrustworthy. Convinced that they need to hurry, they both work hard, sweating profusely. After a while, they emerge from their efforts, and Lloyd excitedly declares the construction complete. He carves some symbols onto a piece of wood, and when Javier examines them, he asks if those are letters. Lloyd confirms that they are, explaining that it's his brand's logo. As Javier thinks about what kind of cons Lloyd has devised for the pub owner, Lloyd suggests Javier should find it out inside. Lloyd lights a fire in the firepot. The pub owner's mother lies down on the floor, expressing delight and relaxation, claiming it's lovely. The pub owner, surprised, asks how it can feel so good. Lloyd believes this must be astounding for the people of this world and attributes it to the magical powers of the Ondal floor. And the pub owner expresses gratitude, mentioning it's been a long time since he saw his mother smile like that. Javier observes the scene and reflects that the pub owner and his mother are smiling just as Lloyd predicted. He considers the changes in his own behavior, realizing that he now works hard and keeps promises to the people of the land. Despite his disbelief, he acknowledges that those two are happy. The system then informs him that his approval rating from Javier has increased by 2 points, bringing it to -29, and he earned 36 RP for slightly improving his relationship with a key character. Seeing the pub owner and his mother happy, he smiles in happiness, thinking this winter won't be too harsh on them. Lloyd confidently tells Javier he knows what he's thinking, that maybe Lloyd isn't entirely garbage. Javier quickly denies this. Internally, Lloyd acknowledges that the cost of timber alone made the project a financial loss, but he's not concerned. This house is just a model house meant to be a showcase for his plans. A few days later, people come to inspect the house and offer him contracts to build similar ones. One person expresses amazement, fearing they would melt, while another asks about the cost. Lloyd responds enthusiastically, suggesting they probably want a room like this at home. He explains that Style A is an annex in the yard, while Style B involves remodeling their current homes. He offers a 10% discount on the construction cost if they order both styles. However, the system notifies him that the villagers don't trust him, and one person declines the offer. Lloyd urges them to trust each other since they'll see one another often, but the person remains skeptical, questioning if he's really doing this and suggesting that at this price, he's practically giving it away. Just then Lloyd's father, Lloyd Frontera, arrives and calls out to him, asking what he thinks he's doing. The system notifies Lloyd that his approval rating has reached -20.